Nebraska is taking a new script to Hollywood. This is the Pick Six podcast with the Omaha World-Herald. I'm Evan Bland with Sam McKewon and Tom Shatel. And if there's such a thing as a quiet bye week, guys, around Nebraska, I don't know that we've experienced it to this point. They have a new OC from a guy who wasn't in the program 2 weeks ago. The fourth quarter of the season's coming up. What a turn of events here for Nebraska football and what's coming up here in the fourth quarter of the season.
Literally like a movie, like you get into the final act of the movie and they put the guy in the game and you didn't expect it and your team's behind and it's the fourth quarter. So for some reason it's weird. I didn't feel that surprised when he said it, and he was real sheepish about it too. It's like, Dana Holgorsen's going to be the new play caller. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's a big deal. And the offensive coordinator going forward. So, have any questions? Yeah, we have questions.
There's a few.
So, it didn't surprise me, though. It didn't feel like it was a stunner. And maybe that's just because I've lost the capacity to be surprised in Nebraska football over the last decade. Nothing would surprise me at this point. And but that was a stunning move by a head coach, wasn't it? To bring in a guy who's not even been in the program to call plays.
What do you compare that to, Tom?
It would have been a lot more stunning if it hadn't been Dana Holgorsen, but that's a guy who is well-known, well-proven. Isn't just some guy you're bringing in from some program somewhere. It's a move that ought to excite fan base, but also the players, and also signal to them, hey, this is serious now. We're not just trying to get through the season. We're trying to win. Lincoln Riley made the same move at USC. Remember, we're 3 games left. It's going to ride out the storm. Of course, he's got a desperate situation. We changed quarterbacks. So these guys are trying to find something. But, it's... Surprise would have been if they had kept Satterfield and had Holgorsen in the building. That would have been a disaster. Every time something went wrong, you looked at Rhule and said, okay, when does he get in the game? When does Holgorsen start calling plays? This guy can't call play. Every time, and whether it was Satterfield's fault or not, just anytime the offense screwed something up or couldn't move the ball, or whatever, you'd have gone, you got this guy here, why isn't he doing it? He's more qualified. Why, and then, it wouldn't have been fair to Satterfield because he we've been looking over his shoulder all the time. Okay, when's Holgorsen going to, and so I thought it was the right thing to do. It just would have been, and also the players would have said, when's he going to, because I'm not saying the players don't like Satterfield, but I'm just saying it would have been really awkward to have him still doing that with obviously Holgorsen there as a consultant. So if you want Holgorsen in to help, then bring him in to help.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many different angles that we're going to tackle this thing on, but most immediately, and this is what Rhule made pretty clear in his Monday press conference, was he made this move thinking about right now. Sam, you had a good breakdown of Holgorsen's history and kind of what he does with his offense. Can you kind of put in perspective maybe what he has done well and what could apply for Nebraska here in the last 3 games?
I think the most important thing that I would underline here is that I feel like Matt Rhule is kind of taking his whisk out of the kitchen and letting somebody cook the meal all the way. I felt like in the UCLA game, there were some moments there where we saw Matt Rhule with a play sheet on offense. Maybe it was the defensive play sheet, but it felt like it was the offensive play sheet. And it just felt like maybe there were some moments there where it was like, hey, we're going to do this, or maybe we're throwing the ball too much. And then they went back to throwing the ball. And it just felt like there was a 3-headed thing going on there. And Rhule was pretty honest, I thought, on Monday of saying, I'm not a super aggressive person in this area. Holgorsen is. I need to bring somebody in to push against me. He said push upfield and offset me. And so I feel like what he's allowing to have happen now is bringing a guy in who knows a lot more than he does about it, and it's going to, again, take his whisk out of the kitchen and kind of let Holgorsen cook it. I think there's a lot of things that Holgorsen can do. They had, of his last 16 offenses going back to Texas Tech in 08, and he didn't exactly call the offense at 08 and 09 at Texas Tech. A lot of that was Leach. But if you go all the way back and you go through the 23 season, I think half of his offenses were above 150 yards rushing. 2 of them were above 200 at West Virginia. West Virginia is a cold weather school. I don't know. I didn't check the temperatures. I don't know if it's as cold and windy in West Virginia as it is in Nebraska, but it is a cold weather place. They've been able to run the football. They do play with a lot of tempo when they have the players. So when they have good players, they run with tempo, and they, one year they had 86 plays a game. Nebraska's never run anything near that, not even when Scott Frost was the coach. So they like tempo, they like pace, they can run the ball, and they run option routes. And for people who remember the shift from Sean Watson to the Tim Beck era, this is closer to Tim Beck than Sean Watson, right? So like this is the Tim Beck offense will remind people somewhat of what Dana Holgorsen can do. And option routes basically allow the receivers a little bit of freedom to read the defense and make adjustments based on that, whereas a more pro-style offense has a prescribed route where you're going to run 9 yards here and you're going to run 6 yards here. And I think you're going to see more freedom out of the Dana Holgorsen offense. And that's what Rhule was saying. We're going to take it from 20 down to 4, and we're going to give the players more freedom, but they have to make more plays.
The personnel part is interesting too, where he's talking about maybe he got caught up in trying to get too many guys touches, and now this idea that let's find out who makes the plays, let's find out what this team can do, and then run those plays with those guys. Like, it seems simple. Maybe it is to a degree. Tom, what's your degree of confidence that you'll see something different this weekend?
Well, if they get in the end zone, I guess that'd be different. But I just don't think this is about Dana Holgorsen's entire offense or what he's, everything he's able to do. I think this is about an offensive reset. You got a bye week. I mean, you're just watching these players out there. It looks like their heads were swimming. Dylan Raiola especially. He was just kind of hesitant. He didn't always. It just seemed like he didn't know where to go sometimes. But here comes the pressure, and he's looking around, and he's getting sacked or hit, or he's throwing him out of bounds, or it just looked to me like they weren't trying to do too much, or they just weren't sure where to go with the ball, or the defense is sending zero blitz, and now what do we do, or how do we? And I just feel like the smartest thing Dana Holgorsen can do is just get back to the basics. Give them some very simple things to do this week and next week. And you don't need to show the whole offense. You don't need to show everybody how smart you are. Everybody already knows how smart you are. And just, just, come into the game and get Dylan Raiola or whoever, or Harburg or whoever on Saturday, give him a few throws you can hit and get into a rhythm. I mean, how time we don't see that? It just, and that's what UCLA did last time. So, it just, I'd like to see, and again, we don't need to do too much of spread it around, but look, I get Carter Nelson in the game and do a little bit more with, Harburg maybe in the red zone or something. I mean, that's what I think we'll see. I think we'll see a few wrinkles like that. Basically, just, I think the last 2 weeks was probably good to just clear everybody's heads and say, well, we're going to do it a different way, and it's going to be basic and simple, and we're not going to ask too much out of you guys. Just give them something stuff I can execute, and then go see if it works.
It could be Harburg all over the field. I mean, Matt Rhule's comments on Monday didn't leave me feeling that they were 100% sure Raiola was going to play. Right. And so if it's got to be Harburg, I do think you're doing some different things with him that you probably wouldn't be doing with Raiola, even if Raiola were healthy, and he's not going to be 100%. So it could be really interesting. We could get out there at the LA Coliseum on Saturday. It'll be a beautiful day. It's supposed to be 60 degrees and sunny. Perfect. And we'll watch him warming up, and we could say, well, there's Heinrich Haarberg taking snaps with Ben Scott, so he's probably the first guy. And that could be very well what happens. And Nebraska's going to have to roll with it either way. They didn't hire Dana Holgorsen just to call plays for Dylan Raiola. So I'll be really intrigued to see how they handle it if you have to use Haarberg. And obviously with Raiola, you can do some of the more of the things that I think you're accustomed to seeing in a Holgorsen offense.
They've got 3 running backs too.
They do.
And he needs to use them because they do in their best offense of late. And let's not forget that. So he didn't come here. I know you don't hire Holgorsen to run the ball, but you do hire him to, take the personnel that's available and let them find the strength, and then take that strength and find the defense's weakness and apply it over and over. That's college football.
This move to bring in Holgorsen, I don't think I've heard anyone have a modern comparison to what Nebraska's done, bringing in a guy who was not in the program. And it's been interesting to kind of look at the outside perception. I think people who casually follow have said, oh my goodness, Nebraska's panicking, right? This is a knee-jerk reaction. This is a desperation move. I'll be curious to get your guys' thoughts, but my opinion is this is Matt Rhule showing that he is one of the more self-aware coaches that I can remember in college football, where he could have given it to Glenn Thomas. He could have played out the string with Marcus Satterfield, but I think he recognized in the moment the urgency and the meaning of winning at least one of these last 3 games, and he makes a move like this because he thinks it makes him better, and it puts him out on a limb a little bit. But where do you guys come down on this kind of spectrum of hey, this is really a desperation move for Nebraska versus maybe something proactive to help him here the rest of the season?
I heard a local talk show guy yesterday said this is all panic. I don't like it, and I just shook my head and said, it's not panic. I think a little desperation is not bad. I think it's urgency. I call it urgency. Someone else might call it desperation. I think doing the same thing over and over is insanity. And so, but I think this is a product. I'm trying to, you say, have we ever seen this before? No. Usually, I'm trying to think over the last 40 years, if I ever seen it, bringing somebody from the outside. Probably not. But we live in a different world now. We live in a world where players opt out during the season. Players transfer every year. So this is a good thing for Matt Rhule. Who has seen now, well, maybe the portal is not such a bad idea. Yeah, we want to develop and all this stuff, but we're watching Indiana go undefeated. We're watching Colorado in a team that they hammered in line to go to the playoff with portal guys. So maybe portal is not the evil thing everybody thinks it is. This is a sort of a coaching portal, right? This is, the mentality is you don't have to wait till next year. You can do things now. You can make moves. You don't have to stay with everything. You can shake things up because the world we live in now is urgent. Players are urgent. They get on the field, make their money. Coaches are urgent to find other places to go. Fans are always urgent. But yes, I think this just falls in line with maybe Rhule. Again, he was away from college football for 3 years. Now he's seeing the world that he's now trying to live in, and it's a different world than when he left before. So I think he's adjusting well, and I agree. He's very self-aware. And yeah, they have people in that building that read everything. We write and hear, listen to this podcast. Hi guys, they have people that do all that stuff and get all the reactions from the fans and everything. But I don't think that's why he did this. He's aware that he needs to go to a ball game, and if he doesn't, it's not going to, it's not going to be, they're not going to ruin the program if they don't go to a ball game. But it's going to hurt, and it's people are going to say, well, that shouldn't have happened. So, Yeah, I think you're right on that. But again, I think it's the transfer portal world we live in has kind of it just changed the game. It's changed the rules of the game, and Lincoln Riley's feeling it. I mean, if anybody's feeling it, it's him, because they're 4-5. They got UCLA and Notre Dame lined up next. This is a must-win for USC, and they got to plan in a brand new quarterback. So that's how desperate that thing is.
I think Tom makes a really good point when he says you can't bring Dana Holgorsen in and then have him loom behind Marcus Satterfield in the press box. So if you're going to bring him in at all, you're probably going to bring him in to empower him to be completely in charge, which is exactly what happened. So it's really more the question of bringing him in at all. And I do think that Rhule spoke to that when he said, coaches are starting to now get with teams and coach in the bowl games and all the rest. And, of course, signing day is December 4th. Portal opens on December 9th. The portal works both ways. There's guys who you want who are going into the portal, and then there's guys who are leaving your team and going into the portal. And even though Nebraska has not been hurt too much by guys leaving the team and going into the portal, the kind of players that you want to keep, they did lose Wan'Dale Robinson and Luke McCaffrey in basically a 7-day period of time. And it's partially because Nebraska didn't really have a vision. Well, they didn't have a vision at all for Luke. And with Wan'Dale, it just wasn't the offense that he was looking for. And so he went and played in Kentucky for Liam Cohen, who's probably going to be an NFL head coach here in the offseason. And so you have to have a vision for your recruits and for your transfers, the guys that might transfer in your program. And I think Dana Holgorsen provides a pathway to that. I don't think Marcus Satterfield was going to do it. I do honestly, though, believe as well that Rhule probably didn't want to give Holgorsen the play-calling duties and the whole thing in the offseason because he really wanted to see how Satterfield and Thomas work together to run the offense and to coach Raiola and to kind of do things differently with a pro-style offense. And I think Rhule also probably enjoyed being able to have, an offense that protected his defense. And Holgorsen can do that too, but I do think this is Rhule kind of taking maybe a half step back and just saying, Dana, I am hiring you, and I am not going to try to restrict you from calling the big pass play. Go ahead. Do what you got to do. Or call the run game like this. Do what you have to do in order to score us more points. Anytime that you turn the dial up on that, you're also turning the pressure up on your defense. And so, in the Scott Frost era, which we all went through, Frost never had any concern about throwing the defense on the griddle. And
right.
Did it with constantly. And so, like Nebraska's defense during the Frost era wasn't statistically very good, but I'll be very frank with you. I think it was about as good as Nebraska's defense now. Not quite as good, but about as good. What was different was the way in which the offensive coordinator treated the defense. And now we're going to see perhaps, we're not for sure because we have to watch the game on Saturday, we may see Holgorsen, turn up the dial on the tempo. And anytime you do that, you're turning up the potential exposure on your defense, which may be why Phil Snow is there, is to kind of help with some of those things because Nebraska's defense hasn't been perfect this year. It's been good, but it hasn't been perfect.
One big picture question before we get to the USC game itself. Matt Rhule on Monday said he would like Dana Holgorsen to be his offensive coordinator into 2025, and that this isn't just a 3-game audition or something like that. And this is some speculation here, but does that acknowledgement signal some sort of long-term philosophical change in what Nebraska wants to do offensively? Maybe not full air raid, but something different than the general approach that they've taken so far?
I just think it acknowledges that the league that they're in is a hell of a tough league. And scoring 18 points a game, he said it, I think, 2 Mondays ago, 18 points a game is not going to get it done. And I think that's true. So I think it's an acknowledgement of you've got to find a way to score points. Is it 4 out of the top 5 teams in the CFP rankings are in the Big Ten?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And here's the other thing, is that Iowa and UCLA and some of these other teams might be really darn good, Evan. They're just losing to really good teams. UCLA had to play Oregon, Indiana, and Penn State. If they didn't have to play those teams and they were playing an ACC schedule, maybe UCLA 7-2. We just don't know. So this is a hard league, and if you're not prepared to score points, you're probably not going to do as well as you want in it. I think it's an acknowledgement of that more than it's about the air raid.
Yeah, and it didn't have to be air raid. It can be can be parts of it. I look at the Big Ten as sort of this anything goes league. I don't think it has an identity anymore. Certainly Oregon likes to throw it, and they play physical, but the West Coast teams are throwing it that are coming in. Indiana likes to throw it around. I mean, Illinois came into Lincoln and was throwing it a little bit. I mean, I'm just saying it's what do you do in November? Okay, you have to be able to run the ball in November, but the rest of the time, and I like the identity of the play action, the run game, play action, throw deep. But sometimes a passing game can be like a running game if guys are going to catch the ball and run with it, which you can throw the pass to them. So I think would be a nice piece for Holgorsen's resume to be able to say he was able to run his offense in the Big Ten and in this weather and all that stuff. Otherwise, he's just kind of a Texas Southwest guy, which he probably is fine with. Excuse me, but if he wants to be head coach again, it would be a nice thing to. Okay, we brought Nebraska back, and we did it in the Big Ten against different kinds of, weather and defenses. So I just look at the Big Ten now as it's not. It hasn't been 3 yards in a cloud of dust in a long time. There's certainly some people doing that, but Wisconsin ain't doing it anymore. Of course, Wisconsin's not winning like they used to. A lot of times that could be the quarterback and not necessarily the offense. So if you're going to run that offense, you got to have a quarterback and receivers. So I think we don't know what that means. It's a great question. I don't think it means they're going to start. They're going to be Texas Tech, but Texas Tech is very windy down there, and Texas Tech certainly had their success against Nebraska.
So Nebraska goes to Los Angeles for the first time in a dozen years this weekend, and it's shaping up to be a game that really nobody could have expected 2 weeks ago. Even when you're talking about. Obviously, the Holgorsen factor, Nebraska doesn't know who its quarterback's going to be for sure at this point. And then you look on the other side, USC's making a quarterback change away from Miller Moss to Jaden Mayava, more of a mobile quarterback threat. Obviously, that's been something that's given Nebraska troubles. Where do you guys start when you're sizing up this game with so many fundamental changes to these key pieces and these with these teams? Where do you start in kind of evaluating how this thing's going to shake out?
Start with they don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what's going to happen. USC doesn't know. Nebraska doesn't know. They know the defenses, but they don't know how the defenses are going to react to either offense. So I think you probably know a little bit more about USC's offense. They're not going to change their offense with the quarterback. It's just going to matter of is he going to make their plays. But it's still, you're not sure how USC's not sure how he's going to play or how that's going to work. So they're trying to find a spark. Both teams are trying to find a spark. So I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking about the USC game there in 2006, and Bill Callahan just kind of crawled in a shell and said, "We're not going to beat. This is Pete Carroll. We're not going to beat this team."
Don't get blown out.
And don't get blown out. And that was, I remember T.J. Sowers, the LA Times columnist, just ripping him to shreds for doing that. Because they were going to get beat no matter what that night. But that was Cow's best year. But he had a good team that year, but he wasn't going to mess with that. That happened the next year in Lincoln. But then who can forget the magical Holiday Bowl? The matchup of Barney Cotton against Sark. Still remember the Friday press conference before the game. Downtown San Diego, Sark, and there comes Barney Cotton. So it was great. And Nebraska played well. It was I think it was the game was in the 40s, wasn't it? I mean,
yeah,
shootout. Tommy Armstrong answering.
Yep.
I can't remember USC's quarterback, but they were more liable to. Nebraska's not going to go into like 06 and just try to get out of there. They're trying to win, and that's why they brought in Holgorsen. I think they're going to attack. We'll see if it works. So, yeah, it's not a great series. It's had a few interesting moments. In 1970 they tied, but that was arguably a game that kind of started the national title run. Being able to go out there and get in a tie.
Yep.
Because Nebraska was coming off a couple of years where they weren't great. They got better in '69, but the whole junior class, that's kind of where they got a lot of confidence. So maybe that can happen here too. We'll see.
I think it starts with the players, and USC's got really, really good athletes all over the field. I always try to go down and watch it before the game, and I'll do that again on Saturday and just see what kind of athlete they have. But I feel like UCLA's athletes are really good, especially at receiver and at defensive back. I don't think it's a surprise. Like, here's a good example. I would argue that Nebraska's best defensive back this season, who's also been healthy all season, is Sear Wright. Sear Wright was probably not going to start there. Now, there's other reasons for that, but, Sear Wright was on his way out at USC, and he's been really good at Nebraska. That's just to say that when Sear Wright's locked in, he's a pretty darn good football player, and USC's got a lot of guys like that. And so it becomes a question of how focused are they? How locked in are they? Are their receivers ready to go? Are they ready to get, rally around a new quarterback who's going to do something different for them? And Jade Maeva, and, he's a little bit more mobile than Miller Moss. Maybe he can get off platform a little bit, do some things. I'll be surprised if he's as accurate as Miller Moss. I really will. Moss was pretty good this season. He wasn't that bad. He was a pretty good quarterback, but he couldn't run. He's not a runner. And so there were times when he would get sacked. And Maeva's probably a guy that gets you a little bit more time, and you can also run him a little bit on design plays. They got a hell of a running back, and Woody Marks, guy that's probably going to be picked in the NFL draft. I don't know, probably a third-day guy, fourth round or something. They got some good receivers. They got a big receiver on the outside that I think is really good. So defensively, they've got some players. They have been inconsistent on defense, but they do have players, and Nebraska's going to have to play well, And on top of that, it does matter if USC's locked in. If USC brings its A game, Nebraska's going to have to bring its A-plus game because USC's A game is pretty good. But USC hasn't brought its A game a lot. They brought their C-plus game to Maryland, and they lost by 1, and they brought their C game to Minnesota, and they lost by a touchdown. So they haven't been consistent. Nebraska hasn't been consistent. I think those things are the things that you look at first, and then I'll be honest, you really do look at Riola versus Harburg. We don't know as of this moment. I think they probably got to go make sure that Riola is healthy and goes out to play in that game, but it is a different team if you're between the two quarterbacks. Yeah, they're just different, and I'm not knocking Harburg. I think there's things you can do with him that you can't do with Riola, but it does adjust what your expectations are, and you have to do a few different things with Harburg. So until we know for sure that Dylan's not only healthy and playing, but also effective, it's hard for me to determine exactly what Nebraska's offense is going to be. He's going to have to go out and play a couple of drives against USC's defense before we know for sure how he's doing.
I think this is a big game for Nebraska's defense, too. Tony White, UCLA guy, going to USC. That's a unit that's been up and down all year. And you think about just the swings that this team has had. Obviously, offensively, special teams has been up and down.
Right.
Nebraska's going to make a run. It's got to come from, as we've said, kind of the golden child of the group,
right?
The team the unit that's been highest achieving. They've had their moments. Can you do it again over 60 minutes against a team chock full of athletes like they have?
That's possible, Evan. I think some of it is they haven't been fully healthy in the secondary. Tommy Hill hasn't played consistently, and Tommy is a really good corner. And if you paired him with Sear Wright, it'd be a pretty good picture. Marquise Buford hasn't been completely healthy. Malcolm Hartzog hasn't been completely healthy. If all those guys are healthy coming into this week, it's a better secondary. And then I think some of the other guys have just kind of hit their ceiling. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They could play in the NFL for a couple of years, but there were some guys last year that made a leap in play. And this season, the guy that's made the leap is Ty Robinson, but some other guys are just playing as well as they were, and they're playing against teams where offensive guys have made that leap. And then they go play Indiana. And Tom mentioned something about how, Indiana's throwing the ball around. Indiana's the team that I think has changed the calculus in the league because they were able to come in because they throw the football and they run a spread offense, and they were able to take a lot of these defenses by complete and total surprise. Like Nebraska's defense did not match up well. Michigan State gave up 47. UCLA gave up 42. Like Indiana came in and ran not exactly what Holgorsen does, but a version of the spread, and they're kicking butt. And I think it opens everybody's eyes to, oh, okay, this is what we're going to have to do now. Some of the defenses in this league really struggle with this. And I feel like Nebraska's, defense has struggled a little bit with that, and they're going to see it this weekend. If USC's on point, Nebraska's defense is going to be stressed because USC can do a lot of the things that Indiana does schematically, and Lincoln Riley is still a good play caller. Whether you think he's a good head coach or not, the man can call plays.
Maybe the X factor is going to be the crowd. If people are going to show up for this game, is the team going to show up? And they're not used to being 4-5. They're not used to having everything off the table. They could go to a bowl, but all of a sudden UCLA is the hot team in town. Notre Dame comes in there. It's going to be tough for them to just to go to a bowl, and they're not used to just going to a bowl. So, but that doesn't mean they're not going to come out and play hard. They might come out fighting really hard, but it'll be interesting to see that, I think. And we expect a lot of Nebraska fans there. What kind of USC crowd will be there for that? So I don't know. It's but yeah, the Rhule thing for me, I think that this has to be a defensive game for Nebraska. I don't know if he can expect Rhule to play. I think he's the kind of kid you have to drag him off the field. He'll probably show up and play. Tell him. Now they'll be able to see him practice if he can do it or not. But he's going to want to be out there, especially for USC. So, but doesn't mean he should be, and we'll see what he can do. It's never dull, is it?
Well, and incidentally, USC is going through plenty of its own stuff right now, too. This isn't mid-2000s Trojans. I mean, like we said, they're making a quarterback change. Lincoln Riley's answering questions about the program being on probation because of analyst stuff. They broke ground on a new facility that they envisioned to be somewhat similar to Nebraska.
Which they sorely needed.
So, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, they're 4-5. This is a huge game for them if they're going to build toward bowl eligibility. So it's not like Nebraska's a mess and USC's a known product. I mean, they've been up and down all season, which really adds to the unpredictability of this thing.
The Riley factor is a part of this. The walls are closing in on him. They're going to have a new president. Their president's resigning next summer. Usually that means sometimes that there's a shift in how you view football sometimes. Of course, USC views football. I mean, it's the Dodgers, Lakers, and UFC football in LA. It's one of the franchises. The fact that they're building this facility sometimes is a reason to go find somebody else to come in and recruit to it. He has not been LA friendly. He's been an awkward fit there. He fights with the media. One of the maybe the all-time greatest at USC was John Robinson, who just passed away. I'm sure they'll honor him Saturday in some way. He was one of these larger-than-life figures in LA who knew how to play the game. He knew how to get all the recruits. He knew how to get all the media, and Lincoln Riley has kind of been not that guy. And I just saw, not because I follow recruiting, but because it just popped in on my screen that USC lost a quarterback to Colorado this week. So I guess a 5-star kid.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that they're all taking note of that too. So, I don't know that he's going to get fired this year, but he needs to go to a bowl game. I mean, USC doesn't like not going to bowl games. Nebraska might be used to it, but they don't want it. USC will, So the Riley factor is kind of interesting right now too.
Yeah.
It is. I think it's an interesting moment in their program, and part of me feels like the quarterback change was made in part to change something. Like, again, Miller Moss, I've watched a lot of him this season. I've watched a lot of USC's games. I don't really feel like Miller Moss has played that poorly. I do feel like when you lose that many games in a row, you have to change in dynamic, and I think they feel like Maeva is very close to Moss in terms of 1-2, so they're giving him a shot. There is an opportunity, though, for Nebraska to go out there and really put that kid through hell. I'm not kidding. This is the first time he's played any sort of extended game action this season, and this is the best defense that he has faced. He played at UNLV last year. The Mountain West is not the Big Ten. If Nebraska can go and heat this kid up and make it hard for him and give him a bad half, they're going to, at halftime, if it's 10-7 or 10-3, Lincoln Riley's going to have to decide whether he goes back to Miller Moss. Like, that's what you got to do, is you got to come out with your hair on fire, and you really got to put it to this kid. You got to test him right away. And you have to put a question mark in the heads of that offensive staff, because I don't think that all those guys on the offense are like, yeah, Miller Moss was the problem. We'll see what happens. But I think Nebraska's got an opportunity to go out there and make that life very hard for that kid. On the flip side of the coin, if he comes out and puts 2 touchdown drives together in the first quarter, watch out, because all those players will line up behind him and they will go. That's maybe the 4th or 5th most talented offense in the Big Ten. And if they get confident, they are trouble. And so Nebraska's got to start fast.
They haven't been confident probably since LSU.
Right.
They can't finish games. So their confidence is kind of where Nebraska's is right now. So we'll see who's able to overcome that.
Got one more for you guys. I've been thinking about this week. Nebraska's got 5 wins, obviously 1 away from bowl eligibility. Say Nebraska can win one of the last 3, USC, Wisconsin, Iowa. Which one, if you can just pick one, would mean the most for Nebraska to pick up a win against? I have a thought, but I'm curious what you guys
mean the most to who?
To the program.
Fans or the players or coaches or just those state?
Yeah, the state, generally speaking.
Well, I think they all would. I think every one of these wins, which would change the mood of the season, the narrative of where the program is, it would become a celebration. If you can beat USC out there to go to a bowl, that changes everything. If you beat Wisconsin and you haven't beaten at home, doing it at home is a big one. Of course, Iowa, they're all different. I guess I would just say any of them.
I just think it's interesting because USC is kind of the national sort of brand in that regard. Iowa's the border rival, and then Wisconsin's kind of somewhere in between. I feel like each one would represent something different for what the program's trying to get at. Do you feel like, Sam, one would be weighted more heavily than the others?
I do, Wisconsin. And the reason I say that is because it's senior day. Nebraska has not won a senior day game in a while. And I think it would be meaningful to win on senior day. And I think it would be meaningful to break a long losing streak to Wisconsin. It's been since 2012, since September of 2012, since they beat Wisconsin. So that'd be the one I would pick, is win the one at home, let fans go home happy from Memorial Stadium. And then, obviously you roll your dice in a really tough environment at Iowa. I just don't at this moment give them a huge chance of winning that Iowa game. We don't know who Iowa's quarterback's going to be. We don't know. Right. So that's going to change things. If it's the law firm of Jackson Stratton, Nebraska's got a chance to win. That guy is like 4th string, and he throws the ball somewhere around his armpit. But Wisconsin, that's the one that I would pick. They're all big, though. I mean, it's what I would say is if you beat USC, you got a chance to win all 3. So there's an opportunity if you can go out there and do all the things that you want to do and walk out of the Coliseum with a 2017 win. I think everybody kind of looks around at each other and says, yeah, that was pretty cool. And so you might win all 3 if you can win on Saturday. And then if they go 8-4, we don't like saying that. Obviously, I get it. But if they go 8-4, they're going to a New Year's Bowl. So there's still some cool stuff out there for Nebraska. The first step is to go out and play the best that they can at USC and really try to play that first quarter like Like it's the whole game. Like you got to get off to a good start. Can't go out there and think you're going to body blow your way to a win. Like I appreciate what Matt Rhule's talking about when he talks about body blows. He hasn't said it much this year. You've noticed. I appreciate what he's talking about there, but that's a team. But you get to the body blow part of the program when you're like Penn State or you're Ohio State. Nebraska's got to go out and win a football game by starting fast and playing well the entire game. And you're not just going to necessarily clip teams at the wire. You have to play elite football from the gate. And I do think Dana Holgorsen's hire does help them do that, because Holgorsen is not going to wait until the fourth quarter to call his best stuff. He is going to go out there and rock and roll on the first drive.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with Wisconsin, generally speaking, but I think the USC game has the chance to provide the biggest splash nationally. If you're a casual college football observer, you see Nebraska hang or beat USC, like that's to me is the one that makes a bigger impact than those other ones. Should we go to picks?
We should. Nobody had a great week last week. Tom and Evan both went 6-4. I went 5-5. It was a hard week, though. It was just a tough week of picks. So Evan is 81-39. I'm 76-44, and Tom is 74-46.
All right.
Here we go.
Hanging in.
Are you ready? A rematch to the 1969 national title game, effectively Texas at Arkansas. Was it 69? I think it was 60.
Who does Nixon like?
Right?
Texas. Texas.
Texas.
Texas for me. Clemson at Pittsburgh. ACC.
Here comes Dabo.
Stupid.
Pitt.
There you go.
I'm going Clemson.
Clemson for Evan. I'm going to go Pitt as well.
Wow.
UCLA at Washington. The hot team against the team that needs to win this to make a bowl. Who is it? UCLA or Washington?
Washington for me.
I'll take Washington.
That makes three of us. I will take Washington as well. Utah at Colorado.
Buffs.
Yep, Utah's getting all banged up. Go Buffs.
Utah for me.
Oh,
Ellis, go ahead.
No. I just say after what Utah, the way that ended last week, they're probably a mess.
Yeah, that was. I got to be honest. I did not really agree with the level of his vitriol.
Their AD is a mess, and that's.
That was a holding call. Let's just leave it at that. LSU at Florida.
LSU.
LSU for Evan.
20.
LSU for me.
Yeah, LSU. I want to think Florida can come out swinging, but our quarterback's thinking, LSU.
Oregon at Wisconsin. Oregon for me.
Yeah,
Ducks.
Rutgers at Maryland.
Oh,
It's
thank God there's a Big Ten for this game, right? To be played.
what do you got?
I'm going Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah, Maryland.
Rutgers.
Oh.
Well, I mean, come on. They're the same team.
Yeah.
And we've been to that stadium, and there ain't going to be anybody there.
That's true.
What a dump. Not a dump, but it actually kind of is. Missouri at South Carolina.
I would go with Columbia, South Carolina.
That's right. Battle of the Columbias.
Yep. South Carolina.
South Carolina for me, too. We have 12 this week. This is pretty good, actually. 7-2 Arizona State at 7-2 Kansas State. Arizona State's falling way under the radar. They're 7-2.
It's just a venue game to me. Kansas State.
State.
Emaw.
What you got, Tom?
K-State.
All right. Don't forget your power towel. Kansas at K-State. Kansas at BYU. Is this the game that BYU has, just like Miami's had? Like Miami had had 9 lives until they lost. Is that this game for BYU?
If it were in Lawrence, yes, but I got to go BYU.
Okay.
Yeah, BYU.
Kansas. I think this is it. Tennessee at Georgia. So, knockout game. Playoff or not. Although if you ask ESPN, well, maybe a 3-loss team can make it. And of course they think that.
Yeah. Georgia.
Georgia.
I am UGA as well. Hard to beat Tennessee's road uniforms, though. And finally, Nebraska at USC.
SC.
I think it'll be a one-score game. Trojans.
And I will take SC as well. I think we're all in agreement there. But, man, is it going to be fun. We'll have the full coverage. It's a nice time for kicking off. It's 1 in Pacific, 3 Central. We'll have full coverage in the paper. Lots of beautiful pictures, sunny skies. It's going to be good.
It's going to be a lot of
A
fun.
lot of Husker fans. Great fight song.
Great fight song.
Top 10 fight song.
Absolutely. Helmet game.
It is helmet.
All the rest. Well, it's going to be fun. We can't wait. We'll be there. Hope you guys watch as well. Thanks for listening today to the Pick Six Podcast. Have a good weekend.